Okay, so in the last class, I'll just go over this slide. We had looked at different parts, including essential, non-essential. In non-essential, we had seen sepals and petals. Sepals they are called collectively as calyx, and petals they are called as corolla, while the stamen is called as androecium, and the carpels they are called as gynoecium, and they have subsequent part. We will see one by one now all these parts. And we had also looked at what is bract, which is nothing but a leaf like structure arising from the axil of the leaf, and especially in the case of bougainvillea where the flower itself is different and the bract is surrounding the flower. And the nectary, which is a nectar secreting scale, and nectar secreting cells. And we had seen in the case of this nasturtium as the flower, which has like a separate nectary around the flower and not with the flower itself, like we had seen in the case of lantana species, that flower which also has lot of nectar. So that was a brief what we had done in the last class. Now coming to the sexuality of the flowers. Now again, I'm not sure if you had studied this particular part, but usually we most of the living species, uh, they can have either both the sexes in the same organism, or they can have separate bodies in the separate organism, like separate sexes in the separate organism, right? In the human context, bisexual means different thing, right? That refers to the sexuality of a person, whether a guy or a girl. Bisexual refers to something else, but that is not what it means in case of flower. So there is a little distinction between when we use the bisexual term in case of sexuality in flowers, yeah, while in case of human being it is little different. So the anthers of the stamen usually produce the pollen grains, that is the male gamete, and the ovaries of the carpel, they produce the egg cell, or what is called as female gamete. That is the generally known convention. And the stamen and carpel, that is the male and female reproductive structures, they will allow the reproduction process to happen. Now, the flower which contains both, that is stamen as well as carpel, they are called as bisexual flowers. Now, and that is when I said the terminology bisexual is used only to represent that both the gametes or both the reproductive structures, they are present in one single, and that is what is called as bisexual in flowering plants. Or they are also called as hermaphrodite, or they are also called as perfect flower, because like you, if you remember a perfect flower or complete flower definition, they have all the four whorls. That means they will have male as well as female reproductive structure in the flower, that is stamen and carpel, and that particular flower is called as bisexual or hermaphrodite. Any common flower, like for example what we know as hibiscus, right? It has both your style stigma ovary as well as the filament and anther in the same flower, hibiscus flower. So that is a common example of bisexual, and of course there are quite many around us. Now there is something called as unisexual flower as well, which has only one of these reproductive structure, that is they can have either stamen or they can have only carpel, and that way they will be called as unisexual, or they will be also called as incomplete, because then there will be only three wholes, one of the reproductive structures and two non-essential part, that is petals and sepals. So that way it will have only three, so that's why they are also called as incomplete or imperfect flower, and that is the unisexual flower. And the example is papaya and palm. Most commonly seen example around us is papaya. If you have ever observed that some of the papaya plant, even if they grow very tall, they do not produce any fruit. The reason being they are male plants, and the female plant only will give the papaya fruit. Like if you take out all the seeds from your papaya that you have eaten and you sow it in the soil and just put all the sapling in series wherever you want to. And if you let it grow, you will see certain seeds they are developing into what we call as a female uh, plant or female flowers, that is will give rise to the papaya fruit, and the other ones will not give, that is the male counterpart of this papaya will not give any fruit. And the reason being, male papaya plant, they are only there for the purpose of pollination. They are only there to spread out anther so that the female plants can receive it or the flowers can receive it, and then they can kind of fertilize further. Yes, Namit.
So can you possibly differentiate between a male papaya plant and a female papaya plant when they are saplings?
Yeah, like saplings.
Yeah, when they're not fully grown.
I doubt there will be any difference during the saplings phase. It only appears after a while. Like there is surely a little difference in terms of leaf structure. But during sapling stage, I mean, at least I don't know, I must say. There might be people would be identifying, but at least I don't know of that particular fact. But again, like if you go by logic, I feel it's little difficult because the sapling would not even have differentiated much with respect to leaves, stem, and of course not with respect to flower. So that is my assumption. But like, yeah, of course we can check around it. Yeah. So that is the unisexual flower, and again you have several other examples as well around you, uh, and that you can look for it. So that is the bisexual and unisexual flower. Now the unisexual flower, that is having only one of the reproductive structure, and if it is stamen, only stamen that is present in the unisexual flower, it is called as male flower, or it is also called as staminate flower. Staminate refers to the flower having stamen only. And the unisexual flower which contains only carpel will be called as pistillate, or it is also called as carpellate, or it is also called as female flower. So that is having only carpels and no male counterpart there. So these are the two unisexual flower. And then there is one more type, the flower in which both the male and female reproductive organs, they are absent, and they are called as neuter flower. Now, these are the ray florets of the sunflower. So, okay, I guess I should show you this diagram if I don't have it here. Yeah. So, ray florets of the sunflower is something, ray florets of sunflower images. So, usually these ones, no, these are not the ones. So these ones on the side, these are actually individual flowers. Yeah. And that is being like brought together as one thing. And that is called as ray florets of the sunflower. And these ones will be having like male and female like parts. But these ones on the side, which looks like more like a petal, but they are not just petal, they are more like a complete flower itself. And because they are neuter, that means they don't have any gender as such, they are called as a neuter flower. Neuter is again without any gender, that is without having any reproductive organs. So that is just one example that I know of. There might be again quite many, but I am not aware of them. So this is the very clear example of the neuter flower. So that way we have seen bisexual flower having both the sexes in the same flower or both the reproductive organs. Then unisexual having either stamen or carpel in the flower, that will also be called as incomplete or imperfect. Then if it is only stamen in the unisexual flower, it is a male flower or also called staminate flower. If it is a unisexual flower and only carpels are present, then that is a fistulate flower. And if both are reproductive organs are absent, that is called as neuter flower. Yes, Yajnesh.
So, suppose there is a plant which has both the male and the female this thing, reproductive organs. So, and a flower which has it, like there are few flowers which have like one flower will have the male and one flower will have the female, right? Yeah. So, the fertility rate in the separated ones will be less than the ones which are in the same flower, right?
Correct. So whenever like that, we are going to see probably in the case of pollination, that is self-pollination. So whenever we have a flower and both male and female reproductive structures, they are present in the same flower, it becomes much easier to pollinate, right? The pollen grain just has to fall on the stigma right then and there, right? And that's when the pollination is easier. Now, when the flower is little distance, let's say unisexual flower, but present on the same plant, that is, there will be separate male flower and there will be separate female flowers, but they are present in the same plant, and there the chance of pollination is little reduced. And let's say even in case of papaya, where the plant itself are different, male plant is different and female plant is different, the pollination is even more rare to happen. Like not rare as such to happen, of course there are other mechanism by which it happens, but yeah, the chance of having self pollination in the same flower, that is same bisexual flower, is much higher compared to the unisexual flower in the same plants, and the less is the chance with respect to unisexual flowers in the separate plants. So that way it goes.
So then, what is the advantage of a unisexual separated flower?
So the advantage of unisexual flowers is to avoid the self-pollination. So during the course of adaptation or evolution, I can say, like these flowers they separated. What used to happen is, let's say, you can imagine kind of, now we are going little part of genetics. So let's say if you have a particular genes and there is no variation in the sense of there are no different genes coming from different gametes. So in that case, same line is getting produced. That is what we call as pure line. So let's say if the pea plant, that is Pisum sativum, that green peas that you know of, that particular plant, if it has a white flower and if it is only self-pollinating, it will always produce white flower. And then whatever genes that it is carrying, it will carry for forever, like whatever number of generation it will go on. But let's say the purple variety of the flower has certain advantage in terms of pesticide or insecticide or whatever natural effect, right? Without any genetical modification. Let's say the purple variety has a better, what we say, immunity in terms of germs and whatever infections, right? And then if purple and white variety is fusing, that is cross pollinating. Now these are same plant, same, just the flower color is differently expressed. But if they are fusing with each other, that is male gamete and the female gamete of the purple and the white flower, if they are pollinating with each other, they will produce a seed which is either purple or white. But the effect of that will be that whatever next generation will be formed, it will surely have better immunity because half set of chromosomes it is receiving from that purple flower, which had good immunity. So that way it passes on, and that is the advantage of having separate flowers. With self pollination, that chance is very less. I hope you understood what I said. Yajnesh?
Yeah, so I got it.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else has any question here or anything that related to that I said? Okay. So if not, then we can move forward. So in most plants, these flowers, they are bisexual. That is most common thing around us. That is, they have both male and female, and in many plants, they can have male and female flowers separate, and they are of two types then. And those plants which have male and female flowers separate, they can be of two types, that is monoecious and dioecious. Monoecious refers to one, mono refers to one, and oecium, that is, or oecious refers to house, that is one house. So when the male and female flowers, they grow on the same plant, like I said, the flowers will be separate, but they are present on the same plant. Example is like your maize or corn, cucumber, pumpkin, these all are monoecious plant. That means they will have male flower separate, female flower separate, but they are present on the same plant. And dioecious, that will be having male flower on a separate plant and female flowers on the separate plant. So that is, again, the example is papaya and palm. They are called as dioecious. Di means two. So I hope this is clear to you all. So there will be bisexual, and then there will be unisexual flower. Within unisexual flower, they can be of two types, that is monoecious plant and dioecious plant. So that way they can be classified as well. Then now we will come to individual parts or the wholes of the flower. So just to go in little bit depth of these structures. So calyx, usually there are 5 sepals, and there is very interesting theory behind this, why there are 5 or multiples of 5 and so on. Or even whatever number of petals, whatever number of sepals they are present in the flower. There is a very interesting theory. I forgot the name of the guy who invented that theory. Okay, I don't remember. Maybe I will share it some other time. I will look it up and then I'll share it. It's a very good thing to read it up, and it makes quite a lot of sense too. So this calyx, they usually have 5 sepals. So if you observe any random flower, whether it's a rose or hibiscus or any other type of flowers, you will usually find 5 sepals. Again, there are exceptions. I'm not saying there are always 5, but most of the times you will find 5 sepals. And the sepals, they can be free, that is called as polysepalous, that is individually they are free, or they can be fused, which is called as gamosepalous. So for example, which is shown here, gamosepalous, these are all fused here, and you can only see a tip which is being free. On the contrary, the sepals which are almost free and only the base is connected with each other, that is called as polysepalous. Poly means many, so here they are separated, so that is what is many sepals, so that is polysepalous. Gamo is usually refers to the kind of fusion, so gamosepalous means fused sepals. So that way the sepals can be of 2 types when they are present in the flower. Now, sometimes, as in case of the hibiscus or the shoe flower, there may be second series of sepals, and that is called as episepals, and collectively again it is called as epicalyx. So this particular, like this is the hibiscus flower, and this particular small outgrowth that you see, the green part, that is episepals, and collectively they will be called as epicalyx. Otherwise, this particular portion will be the calyx of this hibiscus flower, but there is a sub part of this calyx which is called as epicalyx, and that is again found in quite a few flowers as well. Now when the flower opens, the sepals may fall off or they may persist with the flower itself. So now like in some of the cases, what you usually see is only the flower, that is petals from its base, they are gone, and the sepals, they may stay intact and they will cover up the seeds. Or in some cases, the sepals themselves, they fall off and the remaining portion of the ovary is still attached to the pedicel or the stalk, and then it will grow further into fruit or seed or whatever it has to grow. So that way the flowers, when the flower opens, the sepals may fall off, or pulses. Like some varieties of the rose, you might have seen, especially the petals falling off. That is something similar phenomena. But here we are talking of the sepal being like fallen off. The sepals, they are usually green, like we know this already, but in some cases also they can be brightly colored, and that's what was called as petaloid, because they are more like petals. So like petaloid, and that is the case with the gulmohar. Again, you might have seen this gulmohar very commonly around you, or surely in the Sahyadri campus. There are plenty of gulmohar trees, and that the other name is flame of the forest, because from the far, if you look at it looks like the red fire thing, and that's why it is called as the flame of the forest, and that has this brightly colored petaloids. Yeah. Then the sepals, the function wise, the sepals, they protect the young flower bud when the flower is just about to start coming out. That is the bud position, and that is the protection function of the sepals. And also because they are green, they will perform the function of photosynthesis. So again, the examples of Gamosepalus and the Polycephalus, that you would know, or you can always write any other example that you know of. It's no hard and fast rule there. So that is calyx. Again, any question here with respect to calyx? What you need to remember here is the classification of the calyx. Of course, you know what calyx is. So the Polycephalus and Gamosephalus. Remember by the word itself, so you don't have to get confused later. Oh, what is Polycephalus and what is Gamosephalus? I told you poly means many. So that means many sepals will be separate. Gamo refers to the fused version. So the meaning itself of the, and if you can't remember this, we know the gamete fusion, right? In case of like human as well, we call it like a sperm and ova, that these are gametes, they fuse, right? Or even in case of female, the flowers, we call the pollen grain and the stigma, they will fuse, or they, not the stigma, the ovary will fuse, that is gamo, right? That is gamete. So that is what is fusion. So Gamosepalus is fused version of sepals. And the episepals is like the extra version of the calyx or the sepals, and collectively they can be called as epicalyx. That one, and the function, of course. So that is calyx. Then corolla. Now again, you know what corolla is. The petals, when they are arranged collectively, they are called as corolla. Now they can be arranged in different ways. Like in some of the cases, you will see a single circle of arrangement of these petals, or there can be double layer, or it can be arranged in a spiral. So in case of single whole, again the hibiscus is very common example, right? There is only single circular arrangement of those petals. Double whole, that is poppy seeds. So this flower that you see, red color flower at the bottom, that is poppy seeds, right? And you can see the double petal layer. One is little smaller and the outermost is little bigger. So that way there is a double hole in the poppy seed. And in case of spiral, this is the water lily. Now it looks like it is arranged in a circle, but that is not a circle. You can see one petal is below and then the other is little upward. So that way they are kind of spiral in circle itself, right? So that is the example of water lily. You might find multiple circles, like for example in case of rose, that again rose can also be called as spiral, or can be called as in many holes, depending on which variety it is nowadays, because there are quite grafted varieties that you see in the market. So it's difficult to generalize about the rose itself. Now the petals, they can be polypetalous or gamopetalous. Again the same, polypetalous, that means they will be free and there will be many, and they will be fused, that will be gamopetalous. So for example, again you can see the polypetalous, it's the same diagram I have shown you for the Gamosepalus and Polycephalus. In case of polypetalous, the individual petals they are free, and in case of Gamocephalus, the petals they are fused with each other and they form a tube like structure of the flower. Um, there are quite a few flowers with the name itself, like hanging bales, and so on, right? Because they form a tube like structure and the style stigma or the anthers they are hanging from it, so it looks like a bell, and that way they can be called as Gamocephalus because the petals they are quite fused there. Or even the other example would be, you might have seen Nishigandha or Rajnigandha flower. Uh, it's one of my favorite flower. It smells really the white color flower. That's also something like uh, this Gamopetalus, Nishigandha. I hope it doesn't show me any actress. Yeah, this one. Yeah, even though this part is open, but most of the part of this flower you can see it is fused, right? So that way these flowers they can be classified as Gamopetalus. You can see quite a lot of it is more like a tube like structure, right? So that way these flowers can be classified into Gamopetalus. Now the main purpose of petals is of course to attract the insect for pollination, and they will also protect the stamen and pistil, especially when the petals form the tube like structure. So again, sometimes during the bird stage, the petals they are kind of enclosed and then they slowly open, and after the fertilization has happened they again close back or they fall off, either ways. But that way the main function is to attract the insects for pollination. Because of their bright color, insects get attracted, and of course to protect the stamen and the carpel part in the flower itself. So that is again all about corolla. Any question here? Anyone?
No, sir.
Okay, so I hope you are following and remembering all this term now itself, so you don't really have to revise this later because it's relatively very simple, I feel. So the next part is androecium, that is the male reproductive structures in the plant. So now the number of stamens in one particular flower can vary from different flowers. So one might have, like, let's say few in number, to others might have quite a few, quite many in number. So that way, depending on how many stamens are present in that flower, the ability of that flower to pollinate will also be different. Each stamen consists of a long filament and a bilobed anther, which is attached to its extremity. That is on the tip of the filament. Usually, anther is located. An anther is usually two-lobed or bilobed, how we say it, and each lobe will consist of two pollen sacs. That means on one side there will be two, on the other side there will be two. So there will be total 4 pollen sacs, and within the pollen sacs there will be pollen grain. So there will be 4 pollen sacs in total, 2 on each side or 2 in each lobe of the anther, and they will contain the pollen grains. Now, when fully matured pollen sacs, they will rupture and they will liberate the pollen grains. So this rupture is also related to the absorption of the water. So pollen grains, they are usually in a kind of dry state. So as and when the flowers they absorb more and more water, the uh, these pollen sacs they become very tight or distended. That is what we call as turgid in biological language. So when they become very distended, finally more and more water keeps coming and they suddenly burst open. It's something like blowing a balloon. You blow the balloon and you blow it beyond its capacity, it will blast. So that way pollen grains they also get liberated based on the rupture of the pollen sacs when there is lot of water entering these pollen sacs. and then they will spread out, and then the insects can take it from wherever they are, and so on. So that way the pollination will happen. And these pollen grains, they can be of different sizes and shapes. Again, we don't have to go into those details, but just letting you know, they can be a little spherical or triangular or oval shaped and so on. There are various, and they have separate names also based on what shape they are of. But yeah, I guess that you might study in class 11 also, not here. Then the androecium, they can have stamens, which is again, they can be free, which is polyandrous. Again, remember the common terminologies, they are used in different structure, whether it was calyx or corolla or stamen. Poly refers to free and being many, that is polyandrous. Androus refers to male gamete. So many male gametes, but which are free. Like for example, in the flower of petunia, like I can show you here. Oh, yeah, here is the petunia flower. So you can see at the center, there are these yellow stamens, and there are quite many, and they are free. They are not fused with each other. So that is the polyandrous petunia flower. That means having many free stamens. Or they can be joined in different ways. Like if they are joined in like single as in they are fused with their filament, but the uh, anthers, they are free, that is called as monoadelphous. Mono, that means single. Adelphous refers to the group of brothers, right? So that way these stamens, they are brothers. So that way monoadelphous, that means they will be only the filament will be fused, but anthers will be separated. For example, China rose or cotton. Again, the example here. So these anther stamens, they are fused in this tube, which you can see around the style. So this big tube, style will be, style is also fused. So this is the stigma of the hibiscus. This is the style, and then it is fused together. It continues until the ovary, and the stamens, they are also fusing outside the style, and then they are continuing further. So that way the anthers are free, which are shown in yellow, and you can see these red filaments, they are kind of separated, but they fuse at the base of their uh, junction. So that way these are called as monodelphous, right? That is fusion of the filament and the separate anther. Then there is something called as didelphous, right? Which are the filaments are united in two bundles. So there will be two separate bundles that you can see. For example, in case of this garden pea plant, you will have 9 which are fused and one will be separate. That is in two groups they will be. Again, the example is shown here. Pea, the garden pea plant, that is didelphous, where these 9 are fused and only one is separate. So you can see the fusion is very clear here, and this one is separate. So that way, this garden pea plant has this stamen in the form of diadelphous stamen, and then there will be polydelphous, in which the filaments, they are united into several groups. So there will be many fused stamens, and there will be many such groups. And again, the example is bombax flower, and there are other examples as well. Like for simple one will be a citrus. Again, in case of citrus, you can see this is one bunch, this is other bunch, this is third bunch, and so on. So there will be many such bunches or groups or bundles of the stamens being grouped together, and that is the example of polydelphous citrus flower. So again, by the name itself, you should remember this is just the general representation of how do they look like. So monodelphous, they can have a fused stamen, but the anthers are free and they are individually single. In diadelphous, there will be distinctly two groups. This is again a representation of the pea plant, and the one is single and the other group is separate. While in the case of polydelphous, there will be many groups of the fused bundles of the stamen. Syngenesius is not part of your syllabus, but it is fusion of anther rather than stamen. So you can see here anther themselves, they are fused, and this filament, they are free. But that is not the scope of your syllabus. And the synandrous, again something similar, but there will be only two of the filaments and many anthers. So that these are the two examples which are out of the syllabus, but I have just represented it here. And the other type is polyandrous, where there will be many free stamens. So these are the different types of stamens or the male gamete present in the uh, plant, flowering plant especially. Again, any question here? I hope people.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, if the filament is sanguineous, sir, if the filament is combined, then where is the stamen, sir?
This whole part is stamen, no? Stamen is nothing but your filament plus anther. That is stamen.
Okay, sir.
It's just the way it has been represented in the plant. Like some of the see, and again, these are just the representative ones. If you take all the flowers around you and try and observe all these structures, no, you will find so much of variety. Like in some, the filaments, they are fused only to half. In some, the whole of the filament is fused, or in some, completely it will be free. In some cases, anthers will be fused half or completely fused. So there are literally several varieties. In some cases, you might have two different heights of these filament. So that way, there are like literally too many, like too much of diversity in these flowering plants. Okay, so then I will just finish this particular part of the gynoecium, and then we can stop. So again, the gynoecium, as we know, uh, like in singular, they can be called as carpels or pistils, and collectively gynoecium. These are composed of one or more carpels, like depending on which flower it is, there can be only one carpel, that is one style, one stigma, one ovary, or there can be many of these structures. And they will consist of the stigma, which is now here it is shown in this diagram. This one is the stigma, this one is the style, and at the base there will be ovary, which is not shown in the diagram. But yeah, that will be style, stigma, and ovary. Stigma, this is the terminal knob-like part. Some people also say a disc-like part, which is equally true, because this is also a kind of disc, just in little more spherical shape. Otherwise, you can write a knob-like or disc-like, that is perfectly fine. And it is divided into two or more lobes. Again, lobes means compartments. So the stigma is also divided into different compartments, and it may assume the feathery appearance. Feathery appearance, you can see here clearly, it looks like more velvet type of stigma. That is what is feathery in nature. In some cases, the stigma might be little sticky. Again, depends on what chemicals are being secreted there and so on. There are various types, but yeah, there will be various like such representations of the stigma. The stigma is covered with the hair or with the granular papillae. Granular papillae means nothing but just a granular layer or a hair-like structure. Granular layer to allow what we call as when the insects, they come and sit on the stigma, they because of their they will be carrying the pollen grains with their legs, and they can, the pollen grain should fit into those granular layers. That's why this arrangement, or even the otherwise the hair-like structures being present on the stigma, that is merely to entrap the pollen grains carried by the insect, and it serves as the landing place for the pollen sac or the pollen grain during pollination. Depending on what is being carried, usually it is pollen grain and not the whole of the pollen sac. That but in some cases, like I said, in the earlier case we had seen, like usually the pollen sac ruptures due to the increased amount of water absorption inside them. Now, in case if the pollen sac is not ruptured, obviously it will be carried by the insects as it is. It will go and sit on the stigma, and then again the pollen sac will swell because of the water, and then it will rupture on the stigma itself. So that also can happen. So that way there can be again different mechanisms of pollen sac rupture. So that is all about stigma, which is a disc-like or a knob-like structure, can have a feathery appearance, and it has this hair-like structure or the granular papillae-like structures, and it is usually the landing place for the pollen grains or pollen sac for the pollination purpose. And then the style, which is the middle part between stigma and ovary, which is tubular in nature, that means tube-like, slender, that means like little thinner, stalk, which connects the stigma to the ovary. So that is the only description of the style. Style usually helps to carry out the pollen grains from stigma to ovary. That is the function of this style. So pollen grains, once they are deposited on the stigma, they will be carried further to the ovary, and then the fertilization will happen. So that is another function of style. Then ovary, which is a swollen basal part, swollen because it's little kind of oval. Like if it is a cylindrical style coming downward, suddenly it becomes a swollen part at the base. That is the ovary, and it is composed of one or many carpel. There can be single ovary attached to the style and stigma, or there can be many such ovaries attached to separate style and stigma. So that's why it is said they can have one or many carpel. And the inner cavity, that is the inner portion of the ovary, can also be a single chamber or can be divided into several chambers. And these chambers, they are specifically called as locules. So an ovary can have a single locule or it can have many locules. And each of these locules consist of certain ovules, certain number of ovules. Again, can be 2 or 4 or so on. So it depends on what plant and what fruit we are talking about. So that way, ovary will have locule, locules will contain the ovules. The cushion or the swollen region in the ovary attaching to the ovules of the wall is called as ovary. In simplest terms, there will be these ovules which are attaching to the wall of the ovary, and that particular portion is called as placenta. Like even in case of human, this is quite similar. The stigma is more like the vagina in case of female, right? Then the style is more like the tube of the fallopian, which is present in the human, which will carry the sperms which are deposited into the female tract, and then they will be carried to the ovary. So that's something like style. Again, this is just the analogy. It's not the exact similar thing. And ovary is again in case of female, human female, we also call it ovary, which secretes or releases the ova or the egg cell. Here again it's the ovules, which is similar thing. And after the fertilization, we develop the placenta in case of human. In this case, the placenta is referred to as where the ovules they are attaching, because again the pollen grains, they will be carried to the ovules, they will fuse with these ovules, and then they will undergo the process of fertilization and growth. So the placenta ultimately helps to create those seeds. Again, in case of papaya or even the watermelon, you would have seen next to the seed there is a little stalk like thing, which is a little outgrowth, and that is nothing but the placenta like structure in those fruits. Okay, again, any question here? Anyone? I will stop. There is a very little part left, but that we can take in the next class, and then we will continue, and that will be the last part of this chapter.